Hello, hello.
And we're live with Beavers Rebuild What Humanity Ruined.
Yes, very important. So, there have been a few updates since the last time that I played this on stream. You know that experimental golems patch that I was talking about?
Yeah.
They've actually released that to like the main game now. So, but the problem is the experimental saves are saved in a different place than the actual saves. So, I took it as an opportunity to restart.
Yeah,
Also,
I figured that you'd be, kind of doing a different one.
I am trying out a custom map that the map maker called the map that they wanted as
Oh.
a longer Timberborn player. So, and it's been so much fun already. But we're in the midst of a drought right now. So, now's a good time for you to talk about what you're planning to do.
So, while you're having Beavers rebuild as much of civilization as possible, I am going through a series of pamphlets the US government produced on understanding the atom.
Yes.
And the one I am holding right now is called Food Preservation by Irradiation,
Ooh.
which was a great way to start. I don't know how many, like 50 of these. It's a
You
really
have
big series.
I feel like we can almost make this a weekly thing where you just go through one of these pamphlets because they're so
I
cool.
There are so many of them.
They're
So
so
these are from about,
cool.
let's see what the date in the back of this one is. Yeah, this one's from October 1964.
Oh my god.
So they all come out of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Oak Ridge is just a second.
Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I believe Oak Ridge is the a
They
location
make
of,
plutonium.
yes, the test nuclear site. Yep.
Yeah, Oak Ridge has a lot of like test reactors. It's where they make materials for the nuclear program. I don't know if they make plutonium anymore, by the way, but they did make plutonium at this time.
Yeah.
And um, so at the time that this was coming out, they still thought that they were going to be able to safely use nuclear materials and nuclear power for quite a broad range of applications. And so that's why we have food preservation by irradiation.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the idea behind this was that it was kind of hard to sell people on nuclear power because it costs a lot to make and maintain the reactors.
Right.
But if you factor in all of the other benefits, then it pays for itself, right?
Right.
Of course it does. So, I have not actually read through this yet, by the way. I just know of its existence. It's kind of uh ubiquitous whenever looking for these materials. And by the way, I got these like about a year and a half ago at this point, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And it I just kind of had I went on a tear getting nuclear resources from the Cold War era.
You like found some stuff that I didn't even know was even things that you could look for. And
I found a book made by French nuclear scientists in the Cold War who are making jokes about nuclear stuff
and
to each other.
yes. And I grew up in a household where nuclear was a big deal. And I'd never heard of any of these. So I'm fascinated to hear all about this.
So, and one of my caveats is I don't know how long it's going to be easy to get these materials.
Mm-hmm.
So, if anybody wants to get their hands on some of these books and pamphlets, I'd say grab them now. For one, inflation is really gonna impact the prices. These were pretty affordable whenever I got them a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was also very easy to get things shipped at that time. Um, but that's definitely not the case anymore, and it's going to continue to
No.
be even less of the case.
Yes.
So if you are interested in this subject matter and you want to collect on it, I'd say go ahead and get as much as you can right now because um, nuclear politics is about to get really hot.
Yeah.
Um, the nuclear stuff is like Putin basically just sort of threatened to use nuclear missiles
Mm-hmm.
in like international politics um over the last couple of days. And so I just I just think that it's going to be harder to find these materials, especially since a
Yeah.
lot of these materials they were saying things about radiation and nuclear power back then in some of these materials that they wouldn't say anymore. Um, they often have maps to where all the uranium is,
Mm-hmm.
maps of where all the power stations are currently being built, and like those were easy to find back in the 60s and 70s, but it's a lot harder to find accurate maps of that nowadays.
Yes.
They really don't want you to know where it is.
I mean,
So
understandably, but still, it's fascinating that you found these.
So I want to go into Food Preservation by Irradiation by Grace M. Orose.
Ooh.
Food Preservation by Irradiation. Harvest fresh food. I really want to do this voice for it. Harvest fresh food. Oranges as sweet and juicy long after harvest as if just picked. Strawberries firm and free of mold, yet all many miles and weeks away from harvest. How is it possible? They've been radiation pasteurized, exposed to low levels of nuclear radiation. Bacon, ham, and chicken that haven't been near a refrigerator in months are fed to hundreds of soldiers who find them the equal of normal fresh meat. How? They've been radiation sterilized, exposed to levels of radiation high enough to kill bacteria.
Oh,
Boy, this sounds
right.
great.
Sounds
It
amazing.
sounds like a really good idea. Oh my god. Well, this is being so on February 8th, 1963, JFK is still alive and well, and the FDA is irradiating food.
Just.
The Food and Drug Administration of the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare ruled that bacon preserved by radiation is safe and fit for unlimited human consumption. Unlimited human consumption!
Unlimited human consumption.
You can eat all the radioactive bacon you want! With that ruling, a new chapter began in man's age-long battle to irradiate his food,
Ah.
to preserve his food from spoilage. Man's age-long battle to preserve his food from spoilage. Everything that they were talking about at this time, they would always have to like put it in the scale of what we were doing since we were like a bacteria.
Right?
We have come along so far.
Goodness.
Interest is worldwide. Interest in radiation processing of food is worldwide. Oh boy.
Oh my.
Potatoes exposed to low-level radiation to inhibit the growth of sprouts had already been ruled safe for use as food by Canada's Directorate of Food as far back as 1960.
Wow.
Russia also is said to have placed irradiated potatoes on the market. Oh boy! Irradiated potatoes from Russia!
That's exactly what we want.
That's exactly what we want to be shipping international commerce right now. This is, you know what? Putin didn't mean that he was going to go nuclear with weapons. He meant that he was simply going to ship us some potatoes.
Wow.
Uranium enriched French fries.
Mm-mm. Gotcha, glowing from inside and out.
The FDA has also approved the use of radiation for disinfestation of grain in this country.
Wow.
Ha!
First we
Wow, this
have
explains a lot about my
super
parents.
bugs in hospitals, and now we have super bugs in the fields.
Losses from insect damage to wheat run to millions of dollars annually. Chemical pesticides can control adult insects, but their eggs remain in the wheat and hatch when the temperature rises. Exporters believe radiation is a most effective way of destroying the eggs without harming the grain. Throughout Europe and in the Far East, radiation research programs are being conducted to lengthen food life, minimize storage requirements, and to combat insect pests.
Cool.
Radiation processed foods aren't for sale in the United States yet, but in the past few years, intensive research and testing has been done, and more is planned to hasten general use of the technique.
Okay.
How much radioactive food ever made it to market?
Right. I have questions now.
So there's a section on preservation of man's food where it just talks about the history of preservation of food to factor radiation into this history.
Mm-hmm.
So there's drying, fermentation, canning, freezing. It's the opposite of irradiating. Although the factors in successfully freezing food are well under control, the complex physical, chemical, and biological changes involved are still not completely understood. In freezing, as in canning, nature is controlled, even though man is not always quite sure why.
What? What? What the heck was that? Like...
You cut out a little bit, by the way. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if that was purposeful.
No, that was not purposeful. I'm still adjusting my mic. You know, I've redone the setup about 3 times, so...
This is one of those things I haven't been able to articulate about materials from this time period. People keep writing like this.
Wow.
It always sound like this. It is always about, like, you know, nature is... We are able to control nature, but we do not know how. Only that she is temporarily restrained in her cell.
Awesome. Now we got a bunch of water backed up here.
Let's see. How food spoils. Use your imagination.
No.
Food poisoning. Fatal toxin. Botulism. I'm talking about botulism here.
God.
This is before we have Botox, so they're talking about botulism like it's bad.
This is all really cool, especially because of the fact that I'm about to, like, go into food service again. And, like, just...
Yeah, if they try to use some rads on the donuts, don't let them.
Just, like, hearing some of this stuff is really cool.
Radiation, a new technique.
All right.
Yeah, we didn't do this before. Except for canning, radiation processing is the only original, that is, non-natural, method of preserving food developed since the dawn of history.
Okay.
They're so focused on the dawn of history.
The dawn of history.
Since time immemorial, we have been drying bacon. Now it is time to irradiate it.
Oh my god.
Quickly, economically, and safely, without raising internal temperatures more than a few degrees, ionizing radiation can preserve foods by inhibiting or destroying bacteria and other microorganisms.
Okay. Now, we've got this one here. But I think... Yeah. I want to take out the farmhouse and move it over here. Cool.
An atom is conceived of as a nucleus with a positive electrical charge around which it revolve negatively charged electrons. The whole atom is electrically neutral. If an atom
Okay.
is bombarded by radiation having sufficient energy to strip the electrons away, the neutral atom is converted to a positively charged particle or ion.
Right.
Radiation speeding through food ionizes some atoms in its path and causes an alteration of vital macromolecules, or large molecules, which results in destruction of bacteria and other microorganisms. And maybe your face. If this occurs in food atoms, they
Food.
suffer no harmful effects. The food does not become radioactive, and with low doses of radiation, there is less loss of vitamins than in canning, freezing, or drying. Some
Interesting.
vitamins are lost if higher radiation doses are applied, but they can be replaced. They can be
We
replaced.
can replace that. It's okay.
As they sometimes are in other processed foods. Radiation preservation of food is accomplished in two ways: pasteurization, which is accomplished with low dosages, and sterilization, which requires higher levels. Food can be irradiated by bombarding it with beta particles or with gamma rays.
Gamma rays.
Gamma rays are used because of their penetration range. High energy particles, such as electrons from an accelerator, are usually as penetrating and their direction can be better controlled. There's an asterisk here. Spent reactor fuel elements also were used in food irradiation research for some time, but were abandoned as unsatisfactory radiation sources for this purpose. They use spent fuel rods to fucking debug cheese? They are always trying to figure out a goddamn use for spent fuel rods.
Yep.
Just just so everyone listening out there understands, spent nuclear fuel rods are usually not something you're ever going to be able to do anything with, as much as the government is trying to convince anyone that they can.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do is put them somewhere where nobody goes for about 100,000 years.
Yep. And hope that nobody messes with them.
Like, if they figure out a way to reprocess spent fuel rods into something actually genuinely useful that nothing else does, that'd be great.
Yes.
But you can't just put it next to food and it actually be good. That's not... You... No.
Just
Stop trying to nuclear
no.
things. The amount of radiation to be delivered depends upon the food itself and the result desired. If the goal is prolongation of shelf life or storage time, a pasteurization dose, generally from 200,000 to 500,000 rads, is sufficient. Oh, we're playing Fallout now.
Yeah.
If the aim is to sterilize food for long-term storage without refrigeration, the required dose is between 2 and 4.5 million rads. This dose range can also be expressed as 2.0 to 4.5 megarads, or mrads.
Mrad.
Mrads never really caught on, I don't think.
Mrad.
I haven't really heard rads as like a measurement in modern times. They're usually using like, gosh, I can't remember now, but it's like rims or millirims.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, there was like another measurement, sieverts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I hardly hear rats. But like it is in Fallout, and I wonder if they like purposely picked it because it's like more outdated of a term. A dose of 4,000 to 10,000 rads applied to potatoes or onions is highly effective as a sprout inhibitor. That mofo ain't gonna grow. At 20,000 to 50,000 rads, grains and cereals can be disinfected of insects.
All right.
At 50,000 rads, it is possible to sterilize the larvae of insects that lodge inside fruit. 50,000 rads goes through a fruit, and whatever worms inside there is now dead. Yum.
Sounds Fabulous.
Food containers are placed in a rack for electron beam scanning by the linear accelerator. This was an army experiment. Doses of 200,000 to 400,000 rads are highly effective in extending the refrigerated storage life of fresh fish up to 30 days.
Wow.
Bacon and other pork products, chicken and beef can be packaged and then irradiated at 4.5 mrads, resulting in good preservation for a year's storage at room temperatures. Wait. You expose room temperature bacon to 4.5 mrads of radiation, and then you could just leave it out for a year? That makes me feel less like eating it.
Yeah, just a bit. Oh, I really shouldn't have deleted that.
Apparently, they've been testing the nutritional value and aesthetic appeal of irradiated products, which makes me think that post-radiation it might not look as good.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting it's gonna like glow green or something, but it kind of sounds like it looks old.
Yeah. Sounds like it looks kind of gross.
Let's see. Testing for wholesomeness.
Okay.
Certainly no food processing method in use today has been as thoroughly studied as radiation. Over 400,000 animals have been involved in army feeding programs to establish the wholesomeness of irradiated foods. Although the first long-term feeding studies seemed to produce some abnormalities in experimental animals, additional research showed that these often resulted from poor experimental procedures. Unrealistic diets, such as feeding rats almost nothing but oranges. Feeding rats almost nothing but oranges.
What?
An undue strain, keeping dogs mostly in isolation cages,
Oh!
proved to be at fault rather than the irradiated food. Some abnormalities were related to vitamin destruction, however, and some are still unexplained, so research continues. You're not making me feel better.
Not at all.
Short-term feeding of irradiated foods to human volunteers and army personnel over periods of several weeks also has confirmed the wholesomeness of foods that were processed by radiation.
We promise it's wholesome.
The broad program of testing for wholesomeness has included...
Wholesomeness.
I know, they keep using this word. They really like this word. Long-term animal feeding experiments, 2 years, to investigate the possibility of chronic toxicity. Nutritional adequacy experiments, comparative studies on heat-processed and radiation-processed foods to determine effects on nutrients. Carcinogenicity experiments, to determine whether consumption of radiation-processed food by animals will result in formation of tumors. This is sounding like aperture science. Blood and tissue enzyme research, determination whether feeding irradiated foods to experimental animals alters metabolic processes in the animal's cells. I think I, protested against stuff like this when I was in a preteen. I was just like... I think this is why we have PETA. Histopathology examinations. Post-mortem studies of the tissues of experimental animals that had been fed irradiated food for long periods of time.
Whoo!
Alteration of food proteins and other special problems also have been studied by several biological and chemical tests. Other special problems.
Not the normal
Government
problems.
clearance.
The special problems.
Government clearance. The FDA, which has the responsibility for deciding whether a particular radiation-processed food is fit for human consumption, requires that extensive wholesomeness data accompany each application for clearance of a food. Oh, it's that kind of clearance. It has to clear the procedures. In August 1963, the FDA approved the sterilization of bacon by machine-accelerated electrons having an energy not greater than 5 MeV, which results in an absorbed dose to the bacon of 4.5 to 5.6 imrads. And several months later, the president would die. Was it related? Like, what are... Why would you... I know that, like, food sterilization and food storage and food shipping was, like, a huge thing they were trying to work out at the time, but it's just so weird to see them really just go whole hog,
Oh, yeah.
no pun intended, into the nuclear stuff. So, if you live in Massachusetts, you should know that the Army Radiation Laboratory at Natick, Massachusetts, is the most complete food and radiation research facility in the nation.
Alrighty.
It contains the largest known source of cobalt-60, initially rated at 1.3 million curies. That's another radiation measurement unit.
Fun.
A complete food preparation area, a physics and microbiology section, an experimental kitchen, and a taste panel room. Hold the next Hell's Kitchen over there.
Right?
The Army expects to be using many of these foods as rations by 1970.
Alrighty.
I wonder if that ever happened. Fresh fish every day. Here, let's go back to radio voice. Fresh fish every day. Among foods which could benefit most from low-dose radiation and likely achieve commercial success, fish, a highly perishable product, is one of the most important. In evaluating the potential of radiation pasteurization for AAC, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has reported that radiation pasteurization of shucked soft-shelled clams, haddock, flounder, crabs, and shrimp is feasible and would be advantageous to industry and consumer alike. The longer refrigerated storage life resulting from irradiation would greatly broaden the market so that unfrozen fish from the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans could be sold in the hitherto untouched central part of the United States. That's right, these Midwesterners could finally taste fish. This would apparently cause price stabilization? Ooh, there's photos.
Ooh.
Prepared cooked shrimp, radiation sterilized, can be stored at room temperature for many months and still be acceptable. Shrimp preserved in this fashion is now being served to guests at the Army's Natick laboratory.
Alrighty. That's exactly what I want.
Non-irradiated and irradiated. It's really hard to tell what's going on because it's black and white. It just looks like more sterile, but like the non-irradiated shrimp looks weird for some reason, so I don't really know what's going on with the photos. Cherries, peaches, and pears. Citrus fruit. Strawberries. The threatened fig. Potential market for irradiated fish. Make sure to label it irradiated. That'll make it sell a lot faster. I promise you.
Right.
The cost of irradiated fish over non-irradiated fish would be raised only by the cost of the radiation process. This, however, is not expected to be greater than the present cost of freezing. A survey of processors indicates that a cost of... this starts breaking down into, like, cost points and stuff that probably gets boring. Fruit stand economics of the future. Marketing practices. This is just about the fruits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering how they're going to market the radiation. Still a lot of what's it, total impact. Salmonella can be successfully controlled by radiation.
Okay.
Um, Exposure of animal feeds to about 500,000 rads of gamma radiation destroys salmonella germs. In countries like Great Britain, where most of the egg supply is imported, whole frozen eggs can be irradiated in storage to accomplish this. So, like, I do know that technically gamma radiation would not leave it radioactive, right?
Yes.
So, why didn't they ever do this?
Chernobyl.
Ah! So that would have been 20 years from when this was published.
Yes.
Exactly 20, actually. No, 22 years. So I wonder if they were actually ready to roll out stuff right whenever Chernobyl happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, this here is sort of like aiming for about the 1970s for it to happen. And I know that there were a lot of delays in nuclear stuff that happened around the 70s, partially because of getting bogged down in the Vietnam War.
Yep.
Cobalt 60 shipboard fish irradiator.
Mm-hmm.
You would put on this nuclear device on your fishing vessel, and you would nuke those fish right off as you caught them. This is specifically to package the fish. See, it's so hard because I know scientifically this is supposed to be okay, but there's just like a part of me that's like, nope.
Yep.
And I think it's because I don't distrust the gamma particles, but I distrust everything that got the gamma particles there. Like, I just don't feel like these people are also scrupulously checking the nuclear facilities they actually work in. It's not the fish, it's everything else.
Right.
But also when I see stuff like them trying to use like spent fuel rods, it's like I just still feel like this is an attempt to shoehorn radiation and that they would never have actually chosen radiation to do this in the first place. They're just trying to figure out a way to sell radiation to the American public.
Yeah. Basically, we already have a bunch of radiation bearing materials, and now that it's post World War II, they got to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. So there's this program called Plowshare, and I'm gonna jump over to that because I got a pamphlet on it.
Yes.
And this was kind of part of that. Was the idea that what if you could use nuclear stuff to make stuff grow? And the answer is that's not how nuclear stuff works.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna take a break for a second. If you want to like talk about anything that's going on in the game.
Sure. So basically, right now I've done my second expansion settlement here. This is my first main one. Pretty much what I'm doing right now is trying to get a bunch of potatoes set up because these guys, the folktales, they have wooden beaver golems that you can make, but you need biofuel. And for biofuel, the best way to make it is by growing a bunch of potatoes. So this is going to be my farm center right now. And then I'm probably going to figure out something having to do with like more power generation pretty soonish. Probably.
So they are running on potato batteries.
Yes.
Like GLaDOS.
But the thing is that if you don't keep them repaired and updated, they can explode.
All right.
So and leak like biofuel everywhere and make your beavers sick.
So they are kind of analogous to nuclear power.
Yes, that's why I found
'Cause
it
that's
very funny that we were going to talk about nuclear power and I was already working on this.
of course, it's perfect.
It's perfect.
So the plowshare program, I feel like the Beavers would really be behind it.
I mean, the folktales would, yes. They're like
Let's
one
see.
with nature for the most
Oh
part.
my gosh. I want to read the inside of this pamphlet. I think this might be the same thing on the side of all of them. Yeah, they all have the same thing on the inside cover. Nuclear energy is playing a vital role in the life of every man, woman, and child in the United States today. In the years ahead, it will affect increasingly all the peoples of the earth. It is essential that all Americans gain an understanding of this vital force if they are to discharge thoughtfully their responsibilities as citizens, and if they are to realize fully the myriad benefits that nuclear energy offers them.
All
The
right.
United States Atomic Energy Commission provides this booklet to help you achieve such understanding.
Thumbs up. 10 out of 10.
So this is Plowshare, which sounds like some kind of military operation.
It really does.
The powerful statue by the New York sculptor Moisés Marans symbolizes the spirit and the strength of the Plowshare program for peaceful uses of nuclear explosives. I just read the sentence "peaceful uses for nuclear explosives," with which this book deals. The statue is entitled "Swords into Plowshares." The sculpture has received 3 major awards. It is 14.5 feet tall and appears on the facade of the Community Church of New York. This is getting wild.
It appears on the what?
On the Community Church of New York. Other versions appear in Chicago, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and San Jose, California. Must have made several casts. Bronze. This photograph of the statue was graciously provided for use on the cover by Mr. Morans and the National Sculpture Society.
Ooh.
So it's like old-looking beard guy holding up a broken in 2 sword while standing on top of a plow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in that kind of sort of cubist, futurist, like modern but still accurate kind of sculpture style at the time.
Yeah.
Pretty popular around the 60s. Let's see, which year was this one in? May 1967.
Whoa.
So we've jumped ahead 3 years.
So, can they build this?
One of the authors of this is named Richard Hamburger.
Run that by me again?
The authors: E.W. Seabrook Hull, Richard Hamburger, and Carl R. Gerber. He's not like one of the famous Gerbers, but I mean, I think of baby food whenever I hear his name.
Yeah.
Gerber and Hamburger. Explosives for building and learning. Despite the enormous destructive force that explosives have added to the conduct of wars, it is clear that, in the balance of history, explosives have been used more for good than evil.
Okay.
It takes a good guy with an explosive. Although they were first used for war, the ingenuity and needs of man in due course turned these powerful tools to a multitude of constructive purposes. I mean, they could talk about dynamite and how that started out as tree stump removal.
Mm-hmm.
The peaceful uses of chemical high explosives are many. They helped dig the Panama, Erie, and Corinth canals. Without them, modern mining would be impossible. Explosives start reluctant oil wells flowing, blast menacing rocks from ship channels, remove tree stumps, there we go, and dig ditches. They make possible many of the feats of modern construction. They have found their way into production processes, such as the explosive forming of metals, and are employed as space-age laboratory tools, such as shock tubes. Highly specialized explosions power our cars and aircraft. Small charges are used in rockets and flares that help rescuers find lost seafarers. Others give us holiday fireworks. Oh, please give us nuclear-powered fireworks. Still others reveal secrets of the Earth's inner structure or affect the stage separations of spacecraft. What do you want to nuke now? There are solid explosives, jellied explosives, and liquid explosives. Okay, Jack Parsons, I know you like explosives. Although it took nearly 400 years for the chemical black powder explosives to be adapted from military purposes to mining, the imaginative mind of man is already defining, with the atomic age only 2 decades old, an array of peaceful wonders and benefits from nuclear explosives.
Okay.
Oh boy. Uses are as varied as those of chemical high explosives. Someone just wants to blow everything up. Even as nuclear energy has brought a new dimension to the term explosion, so man has begun to think in terms of heretofore impossible things he can now do with explosion. This book is about how to do anything with an explosion?
What?
Not only is he thinking, he is doing. A nuclear explosion technology for peaceful applications is being developed.
Okay.
Geographical engineering describes the use of nuclear explosives to change the geography of our planet, digging sea-level canals between oceans, stripping overburdens, such as the waste rock lying between the surface and a mineral deposit, from deep mineral deposits, cutting highway and railway passes through mountains, creating harbors and lakes where none existed before, and altering watersheds for better distribution of water resources. That's right. Nuclear water source. That's a good start.
Oh, most certainly. Sure.
Oh, okay. I am so curious to see if they have tested anything yet in this book. The mission. More than anything else, it is the mission of Plowshare to develop, within years, a technology for using nuclear explosives peacefully, comparable to that developed for conventional explosives over a span of centuries. The Plowshare program is an ambitious undertaking, but one in which the rewards are commensurate with the effort. The effort of exploding everything.
Explode it all.
Chemical high explosives derive their energy basically from chemical reactions. Nuclear explosives release energy from within the atoms of the explosive material. Nuclear bonding, or the forces holding the center of the atom together, involves a few million times more energy than chemical bonding. When a nuclear reaction occurs, some of the nuclear mass is converted into energy, according to Albert Einstein's, famous equation.
Yes, of course.
There's a whole bunch of explaining how we do this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, fissioning uranium-235. That's a fun time. Let's see. Chain reactions. Oh, nice little diagrams of it. The nuclear explosive. Uranium or plutonium. What does a nuclear explosion do? The energy of a nuclear explosive is released in less than 1/millionth of a second.
Okay.
This energy may be thought of as being divided into 3 categories: kinetic energy, thermal radiation, and nuclear radiation. Oh boy! Unlike a chemical explosion in which most of the initial energy is kinetic energy, in a nuclear explosion, an appreciable fraction of its initial energy is thermal radiation. The proportion of this thermal radiation increases with the yield. The small part of the initial energy from a nuclear explosion also appears as nuclear radiation, primarily in the form of neutrons and gamma rays, which are, of course, absent in a chemical explosion.
Of course.
You know when you explode something really big in Minecraft and you get all the way down to the bedrock?
Mm-hmm.
In an explosion to excavate a crater, the shock wave and pressure not only fracture the rock between the point of explosion and the surface, but also set the rock in motion. Then, because the pressure of the rock lying above the explosion point is less than that in the cavity formed around the explosion point, the cavity grows preferentially towards the surface, pushing the rock up and out to the sides, leaving a crater on the surface. But why are you doing this? But why are you doing this?
But why?
So, the depth at which a nuclear explosion occurs and the physical properties of the rock in which it occurs consequently determine whether a crater will be formed, and if so, how big it will be. See diagram. So, they're exploding nuclear weapons underground, and then looking at the kind of craters they create to see if that will be useful for excavation. This is something American tax dollars paid for.
Yes.
There, by the way, there are photos. There's A, B, C, and D. A is as the explosion occurs. So there's like a dome of dirt.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if the ground formed a pimple. and like it's just amazing looking. And then right after that is like two shots of the explosion, like the initial boom, and then like more shrapnel coming up, and then D is like the crater that's left behind, which looks like it's on the moon or something.
You're no longer
Um,
stranded.
so this is a good way to make a hole, according to someone.
Yeah.
Um,
Don't mind me. I was just yelling at beavers.
that's fine. I want to yell at the government. There's all these diagrams of how they just basically end up making a freaking hole.
Wow.
They figured out like what it turns into after it explodes too, like
Oh no.
what kind of solidified glassy rock, broken rock, fracture zone, void space, all sorts of fun. Experience with completely contained underground explosions has demonstrated that radioactive gaseous material presents a controllable hazard.
Okay.
In an explosion in a medium that turns to slag, almost all radioactive particulate material is concentrated in the melted rock, which upon cooling solidifies into a glassy substance.
Mhm.
Any residual radioactive material that can be reached by water may constitute a possible hazard. Consequently, studies are being made of the migration and dispersion of radioactive explosion products in groundwater. By the way, if you live near where these explosions and experiments happened, you should move.
Just maybe.
Oh, Rontgens. There's another one of the units. It's like 3 or 4 years later, maybe they flipped over to that. At some point, I want to do like kind of a deep dive into the different increments used to measure radioactivity and like other radiation stuff, because just the history of the different terms and when they're used and why and by whom, I think would be pretty interesting to know.
Yeah.
Several aspects of a nuclear cratering explosion shown here could be hazardous to man if not properly controlled. There's like things labeled here like local fallout, residual radioactivity, air blast.
Wow.
Ooh, wow. The world's first thermonuclear explosion was detonated at Eniwetok Atoll in the Pacific in 1952.
Hmm.
Its 10 megaton yield dug a crater in the reef approximately 5,600 feet wide and 160 feet deep.
Oh my god.
Like, there's photos of before and after, and it basically cuts the thing in half. Like, there's only a strip of land that keeps connecting one part of the atoll to the other after that.
Oh my god, are they literally building this? That sounds really cool. Oh my god, they're
It's
building them.
wow, you can see all this shrapnel that's there too.
I don't know why, but for scaffolding, apparently, like, it doesn't matter how low it is, they will build it. I don't know if you're looking at my screen right now, but, like,
Oh, interesting.
it's. They can't reach anything else, but they can reach this, apparently. Somehow they drop it down.
Hmm.
So, that's very helpful.
Excuse me. I was kind of looking at the history of thermonuclear explosions. Because once they have thermonuclear explosions, as opposed to just fission bombs, they start considering those for use because they're like, maybe this won't be as bad.
Yeah.
It's because it's a fusion reaction. Fewer fission products to contend with.
Hmm.
Finally, the explosive could now have yields as big as you please. That's in quotations, as big as you please.
Wow.
Translated into practical economics, this meant that Earth could be excavated for a few cents per cubic yard in some projects, in which conventional methods would cost from 20 cents to $5 per cubic yard.
Whoa.
So they considered the possibility to use nuclear explosives to dig a sea level canal across Israel.
Hmm.
That was during the Suez Crisis. There apparently was a crisis with the Suez in 1956. I now want to know if that. I have to look this up because I have to see if it was anything like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that thing that happened? Suez Crisis, 1956. The Suez Crisis, or the Second Arab-Israeli War, also called the Tripartite Aggression in the Arab world, and the Sinai War in Israel. I've heard of the being called the Sinai War. Was an invasion of Egypt in late 1956 by Israel, followed by the United Kingdom and France? Oh my god. The aims were to regain control of the Suez Canal for the Western powers and to remove Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, who had just swiftly nationalized the foreign-owned Suez Canal Company, which had administered the canal.
Yep.
After the fighting had started, political pressure from the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Nations led to a withdrawal by the three invaders, who were Israel, United Kingdom, and France. The episode humiliated the United Kingdom and France and strengthened Nasser. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Nasser. Wow. I need to research more Cold War history, and especially Israel and Egypt's history. I had no idea. So apparently, while we lost access to the Suez Canal for a little bit, um, they were thinking of making a new fun canal across Israel using fusion bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I cannot imagine that world.
Right?
Part of why I keep on looking through the Plowshares book is because I'm like, where's an example of any time we ever did any of these things? Um, they've got all these projects that are happening in the 60s involving all these explosives, and I just feel like there were some guys in the army who just wanted a bunch of excuses to blow things up.
Yes.
Because it's like Project Dugout was instituted in 1964 to explore the use of explosives in digging ditches. And it's like, but how much do you really need to figure out there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess this is where the Army Corps of Engineers gets their stats from, is by blowing everything up ahead of time.
Yes.
Wow. Do you get to use any explosives in your Beaver game?
Yes. You make them out of
What kind of
paper.
explosives do you get?
You get dynamite
Right, that's
from
right.
paper.
Dynamite from paper.
Yes.
How does that work?
I have no idea, but beavers are twice as likely to get injured in the explosives factory than in any other factory.
How to make a paper dynamite TNT
Are
bomb
you
DIY.
looking this up?
I looked up dynamite from paper, and the first thing it came up with on YouTube was how to make a paper dynamite TNT bomb DIY. This is
Ooh.
origami art.
Okay. I was like...
It's just origami. I, too, was threatened by this existence.
Oh, no.
Origami dynamite stick.
Injured. Hold on. I gotta... I need to make a bed. There. Oh, his tail! Where are you at? Oh, he went... Oh, he's under there. Come out. There he is. Can you see this on stream?
Oh no, I was looking up stuff. I see it? Enter a new name, Tazingo Short Tail.
His tail. He hurt his tail.
Oh no!
The poor thing. Yeah, now he's in his medical bed.
Aw.
See? Oh, it's so sad.
Oh no.
I love this game. Anyways, continue.
I'm looking up the original recipe for dynamite. You know, like the original chocolate chip dynamite recipe.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, everyone knows the original chocolate chip dynamite recipe.
It thinks that I'm asking for a sandwich that's made in Rhode Island.
Sure.
I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. It's made of nitroglycerin, sorbents such as powdered shells or clay, and stabilizers.
Okay. That does not sound like anything like I'd been working on.
Let's see. In France, Nobel encountered nitroglycerin, which Pelouse cautioned against using as a commercial explosive because of its great sensitivity to shock. And then Nobel patented it anyway.
And then Nobel did it anyways.
How do you... I'm gonna click on nitroglycerin.
How do you build such a thing?
History. First practical explosive produced that was stronger than black powder. First synthesized by Italian chemist Asciano Sobrero in 1847, working at the University of Turin. Sobrero initially called his discovery pyroglycerin and warned vigorously against its use as an explosive. you, you did not warn hard enough. Nobel then
Yeah.
used it as a commercial explosive. He was the one who thought to like use it as an explosive anyway.
I'ma do it anyways.
Nobel's innovation was, but what if we did it anyway?
Right. Oh, God fucking damn it.
Okay, so apparently there was a ban on the transportation of liquid nitroglycerin. Right now it says here in California, but I know at some point you just can't transport liquid nitroglycerin.
No.
So you would have to manufacture it on site to use it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a business that exported a liquid combination of nitroglycerin and gunpowder called blasting oil, which was extremely unstable and difficult to handle, as evidenced in numerous catastrophes. The buildings of the Cromwell factory were destroyed twice. When your factory destroys itself twice, I think it's a signal to stop.
Yeah, just.
Oh, you know when you read the paragraph backwards?
Uh-huh. Oh, no.
This factory was founded by Alfred Nobel.
What?
Yes! He came up with blasting oil.
Man.
Alfred Nobel's factory destroyed itself twice.
Oh my God.
I think that he owed the world the Nobel Peace Prize at some point.
Yeah.
I always hear the legend of it's like, you know, he only wanted it to help with excavation and building things and removing stumps and never wanted it to be used as a weapon. And it's like, yeah, but even before it was used as a weapon, it was killing a shit ton of people.
Right.
Because it was really freaking dangerous.
Yeah.
It destroyed a Wells Fargo company office in San Francisco. This is like in 1866.
This is back when they were actually a stagecoach company.
Yes! That's what led to the ban on the transportation of liquid nitroglycerin in California.
Yeah.
This is apparently, if it weren't for nitroglycerin, we would not have built the first transcontinental railroad.
Okay.
That's right, because it all went through the freaking Badlands.
Oh.
Those were considered uncrossable at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you'd have to be blowing holes in mountains and making tunnels everywhere. So, this has been all about explosives.
This has been all about explosions.
Ooh, I found a new word.
What word did you find?
I don't know what a diluent is. It's not the word that I found, it's just a word we have to get past along the way. But nitroglycerin and any diluents can deflagrate. Burn.
Okay.
Deflagrate.
Deflagrate. Can you spell that?
Deflagration. To burn down.
Ooh.
Subsonic combustion in which a premixed flame propagates through a mixture of fuel and oxidizer. Deflagrations can only occur in premixed fuels.
Lovely.
Most fires found in daily life are diffusion flames.
Okay.
Most fires found in daily life.
How?
I love how all of these things are written. I am just on Wikipedia. Most
Yes.
fires found in daily life are diffusion flames.
I love it.
If you're walking around in daily life and you see some fire, honey, that's a diffusion flame. Don't kid yourself. There's no way that's a deflagration. It's just a diffusion flame. Move on.
Right?
Flame physics. I feel like this is like now part of the drag show.
Flame physics.
Flame physics.
How did a bunch of people just... Oh.
Huh?
I just had a bunch of old people die.
You mean old beavers?
Yes.
The beaver elderly.
And...
Elder beavers.
Yes.
Long in the tooth.
Ah. That was bad.
Yes.
That one hurt.
So, I'm a little tired of blowing everything up. I want to look into career. I was trying to make a nice, smooth segue.
What are we going
Seriously,
to now? I got distracted by you being tired of blowing everything up.
Careers in atomic energy.
Oh!
Now, I do want to make a caveat that probably half of these careers involve blowing everything up. So, table of contents. The scientific mind. Scientists are people. The time to begin.
Wait.
College.
Wait.
Is it
Pause.
a necessity?
Pause.
Pausing.
Scientists are people.
They are. They're people.
They're people. You need to remember.
This is, let's see what year this is. 1967, and they're really having a lot of trouble convincing kids to get into the STEM fields. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
See, now, what's happening in 1967 is that TV and radio and movies, everything's in color now, and there's drugs.
Oh, no.
So it's kind of like a proto-YouTube. They don't have social media, but they do have marijuana. So it's kind of hard to get them to sit down and do math.
God.
The time to begin. College, is it a necessity? Remember, this is for atomic energy programs. Scholarships and other financial assistance. I bet college is a necessity.
Oh, man.
College, how many years? Oh, it turns out college is a necessity.
Yep.
Work of the atomic scientist. Location of the atomic scientist.
Ooh.
Excuse me just a second.
All right. Maintenance work on the stuff is important. All right, we're going to go ahead and pause those. Pause.
Sinus attack of the atomic scientist.
Oh, no.
So, location is interesting. I want to read these little bullet points. There's only 6.
Mm-hmm.
The United States government, private industry, educational organizations, hospitals, state and local governments, and other organizations.
Ooh. And other.
Other organizations, aka Dr. Evil. Someone on a volcano island.
Right.
Professional satisfaction and selected reading list.
Okay.
Let's see. A student, you can find your career in atomic energy in any branch of science you choose because atomics is not a field unto itself divorced from the rest of the scientific world.
Wait. A student like me?
You.
Me?
These booklets, I think, were probably sent to schools, and they were there in like your school library or
Yeah.
your they were probably there in your science teacher's like classroom for you to be able to read.
Right.
Like I actually saw books like this whenever I was a kid, but they were from like a decade or two later.
Mm-hmm.
They had basically cleaned out all of um actually it was really interesting in third grade. um I remember my science and math, like it was like science, math, and reading. I think she did one half, and then someone else did the other half. In the lower grades, the class divisions are weird,
Right.
but like she was looking at um the whole class, and she's like, okay, everyone, I've got all these books here that like are for different things. These books over here are good anytime you want to look something up. Those are like encyclopedias and dictionaries and whatever, they're good for reference. But these books over here, I really don't suggest you look anything up in those. They're pretty old, and so they could be out of date. And someone asks like, well, what's in there that's not correct anymore? And she's like, yeah, those say that we haven't gone to the moon yet. And so whenever I was in school, like in like grade school, there was a lot of material still out there from before we did our first moon mission.
Mm-hmm.
And that divide, like pre-moon mission, was kind of like their cutoff for whether a book should stay around or whether they should
Mm.
get rid of it and replace it. A lot of
Mm.
that had already been replaced by the time I got into like, you know, middle school and like up into junior high and high school.
Right.
But they were really interesting while they were still around.
Yeah, like a lot of these books that you're reading from right now are incredibly interesting because that's actually things that they were doing at the time.
And it's not like they didn't do nuclear anymore whenever it was the 80s, but by the 80s, I really feel like they stopped putting so much of the nuclear science out there in
Mm-hmm.
front of like school children or even high school children, and they kind of like acted a bit more secure about it,
Yeah.
which made it really difficult because at the same time they were teaching high schoolers uh um the nuclear model of atoms,
Mm-hmm.
like the electron cloud instead of the electron orbits.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't teach you anything else about nuclear science at the time, and the teacher really wouldn't know anything about it or understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like really frustrating. On the one hand, they were insisting that we have the newer materials, but on the other hand, they didn't seem to have actually learned them.
Right.
So, careers in atomic energy.
Ooh.
Let's take a look. Now, scientists are people.
Yes.
With increased national attention focused on scientific activities, some people have developed strange notions about the man who wears a lab coat. Scientists have a high degree of objectivity in the laboratory, but they usually are not different from the rest of society in matters of religion, marriage, parenthood, or politics.
Okay.
Often they don't adhere to a strict 8-hour day, but neither does a salesman. Oh, I think around this time is whenever the nuclear scientists and also maybe the rocket scientists were being told to clean up their fucking act.
Ah.
A lot of them were like wife swapping or like hanging
Wait.
out at bars way more than you should be.
What?
Oh yes, Jack Parsons was wife swapping. That was part of his like occult lodge thing. He was over in chemistry based explosives. He was not doing nuclear science. He was simply making rocket fuel.
Right.
Um and he's a he's a totally another topic. But like
We're not going to get
basically
into him right now.
right around now is whenever red fear is really really like ramping up,
Mm-hmm.
and all of these nuclear scientists they got where they were because in the 40s and 50s They were the only ones who could figure out how to bang atoms together. They saved the world with nuclear bombs, according to some notions, and they could pretty much do whatever they wanted. They were making lots of money. They could have any woman they wanted. Like, they could, buy nice cars, have a really, really, great house and everything. So, they got really cocky. The thing is that around that time, you also had McCarthyism cropping up, where people were being put on lists on what determining whether or not they were communists.
Right.
So if you were too cosmopolitan and hanging out too much with Hollywood people, you might be one of them. So around this time, they're trying to really push that nuclear scientists are Americans with American values.
Of course.
Which means they have religion. Because they don't... That one of the big fears about communism is that, like, they don't do religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at the time, the USSR was, like... It's weird, because they have the Eastern Orthodox Church in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't go away. But they're interpreted by America as completely anti-religion.
Right.
Religion was viewed with fear in a lot of the Soviet regimes because it was considered to be like something that people would kind of join together and possibly overthrow the government with.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I mean, like anyone would assume.
So, scientists are people.
Scientists are people.
Often they don't adhere to a strict 8-hour day, but neither does a salesman. They may seem unusually dedicated to their profession, but so does a master chef. They rarely are geniuses. Sometimes they have superior intelligence, but frequently they have ordinary intelligence. Most are reasonably well. I think that people are having trouble believing they could be a scientist, like that they're not smart enough. Mostly they have ordinary intelligence. Most are reasonably well balanced. Some are eccentric, and a few are downright peculiar.
Whoa!
Oh my gosh, but they're not so weird, they're not American. But these same characteristics can describe lawyers, businessmen, and secretaries.
Okay.
Wow. Also, by the way, secretary is still a male profession at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The time to begin. If you are seriously planning a career in science, and if you are devoting your time to the study of science, mathematics, English, and foreign languages, you are laying the foundation in school right now for your future.
Woo!
Whether you are a he or a she, can begin now without waiting until the 6th or 9th or 12th grade introduces you to further courses. So this is like aimed at
aimed for like elementary or middle school children.
Yeah. This is aimed for elementary kids to start getting them excited for science because they don't understand how to get kids excited for science at this point.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is the thing with the space race, is it got a lot of kids excited for science because they could see themselves being an astronaut.
Yeah.
Like, being in a spacesuit and flying a rocket or something like that, that's cool. But they were really having a lot of trouble making, like, nuclear science seem cool to kids.
Mm-hmm.
Without filling their heads full of weird ideas about, like, ray guns. And, like, monsters being made by radioactive spider bites.
Right. Because everyone's afraid of that.
So there's a photo of a woman at some sort of scientific machinery that has something to do with radiation.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's some kind of control panel or something. And this is the caption. Girls have no reason to feel that any branch of science, including nuclear technology and engineering, is strictly a, in quotations, man's job.
Huh.
So, like, they're opening up the door even though like already women have been working in these fields, like
Yeah.
Madame Curie, the person who discovered radium was a woman.
Yeah.
She did it with her husband, but like he always is kind of listed as an also ran. Um, just so you know, girls, you can be in this too.
Girl power.
Um, college is a necessity. Many intelligent and successful people never attended college, but few of them are in the scientific ranks. If you want a career in science, you must first select a college or university. Many factors, of course, determine this choice. The
Of
first
course.
question you have to ask yourself is a rather grim one. Which schools will admit me? With the rapid
Wow.
with the rapid increase in student population, the shortage of teachers, and the physical facilities of universities strained to bursting, it is no longer possible for colleges to admit everybody who wants to enter. Again, as always, this is where hard work in elementary school. Or
Wow.
they don't really have middle school at this time, though. It just says elementary and in high school pays
Mm-hmm.
off. Good grades in solid subjects are master keys to university gates. Entrance exams
Okay.
required by many schools are stiff, but a background of 12 years of conscientious study usually prepares you to deal with them. God.
Conscientious study. Ugh. I just sounded like tired even saying that.
I'm reading through
Man,
this to
can
see
you
if there's.
imagine being like an elementary school kid and reading this and then just being like, so I have to get good grades in middle school, high school, and college?
So it's actually saying here, inevitably, some intelligent students who lack motivation fail to achieve top grades in high school. Science careers are open even to these students if they choose their colleges carefully. Sometimes small, less well known colleges will admit them because the competition for entrance is not as great as it is in name colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Small schools should not be dismissed as second rate. They are usually staffed by fine teachers, and even with limited laboratory facilities, such colleges still offer excellent training. So basically, you might have to get a dinkus college,
Yeah.
but you could still get a gerb. Um,
How inspiring.
let's see. How many years of college? A bachelor's degree in one of the physical or geological sciences, such as physics, chemistry, biology, geology, archaeology, agriculture, metallurgy, or mathematics, usually requires 4 years. Some
Metallurgy.
engineering, some engineering programs require 5. A medical student, on the other hand, sometimes takes only 3 years of college and then goes directly into medical school without a bachelor's degree, but with 6 to 8 years of training still ahead of him.
Uh, I don't think
I
that's the
know.
case anymore.
Yeah. Just a second.
All right. Well, he is paused. I am looking at this because I'm about to do a major home renovation. Trying to decide when I'm going to do that.
Yeah, most of this book is basically about like how you should
Now.
plan your college and education and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very interesting as a reference for what the nuclear field was at the time because in the back it talks about like the different places you'll be working and the different facilities like the United States government needs you at.
Mm-hmm.
But this would definitely not be something that you'd want as a resource for now. It's so completely out of date.
Yeah. I don't
It's
even
not as
know.
hilarious as Plowshare, though.
I don't even know if, like, a degree in metallurgy would even get you into the atomic fields now.
That's it, like, and I don't even know why they mentioned that exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I think they're more just mentioning these degrees as giving you an idea of what different science degrees really entail, but I don't think that those were really suggested for getting a nuclear career. Like, let me see, because Work of the atomic scientists. Um, So most people who are familiar with the broad academic breakdown of the sciences into physics, chemistry, biology, geology, engineering, and mathematics. It is therefore convenient to examine the activities of scientific personnel in each of these areas, as well as medicine, with emphasis on the nuclear energy aspects of each. So basically, they're not saying that you're going to go be a nuclear engineer specifically. Like, if you're working in the nuclear field, then nuclear touches all aspects of science at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be a nuclear physicist, it would be different than being a nuclear chemist, which is a thing.
Right.
And then they have like biology, geology. The geology people are definitely doing plowshare. There's a photo that has like ew. I'm allergic to it. There's a photo of animal testing with bunnies.
Oh no.
Engineering, mathematics. Oh, it's a big computer. The much publicized electronic computers are vital in modern science.
Dun, dun,
But
dun.
they can't add 2 and 2 without trained personnel to operate them.
Of course.
That's what they like to tell you.
Right. Come on.
Metallurgical. Oh, here we go. Metallurgy. Metallurgical and ceramic engineers test and evaluate the strength, durability, and other characteristics of materials to be used in the fabrication of equipment. They produce new materials for specific jobs. A metallurgical engineer might produce a spaceship shell that meets the requirements of minimum weight, maximum shielding from radiation, and high strength.
Huh.
May analyze various materials for use in atomic reactors, nuclear submarines, or medical treatment rooms where radioactivity is used.
Interesting.
Ceramic engineer tackles similar problems. I'm thinking of like nowadays they don't use the same kind of fuel rods. They have like these fuel blades that are like a type of steel that is ionized with like they flash certain metals like beryllium onto it, and the uranium gets on there somehow.
Cool.
Like I think it involves ions, but like that's where I would think of metallurgy being like today.
Yeah.
So it's like a cool pamphlet. I think it's really neat for history's sake and for getting like a good feel for where the field has been.
Yeah.
Also, I'm like, there's a list of scientific areas in the back.
Huh.
It's selected reading list.
Oh,
and,
fun.
Like agricultural research workers, 1961, 7 pages. Careers, box 522, Largo, Florida, 25 cents.
Oh, wow.
So you would just like mail a postcard or something, like you'd mail like your 25 cents to this address and they would send you this 7-page pamphlet.
Oh my god.
The same for careers in mathematics, careers in fishery science. One of the things that really gives me like this nostalgia for a time I was never in is whenever I read through older books that have these long lists of places that you were supposed to mail off to for these materials, because it just like that stopped happening by the time I was already around.
Yeah.
And then it's like 25 cents, 10 cents, if only.
Right. That is fascinating. Oh, we lost another worker. Okay. Well, at least we have a ton more kids now.
Yay! And they can all get careers in atomic energy.
Yes. Oops.
So I've gone through There's nuclear energy for desalting.
Okay.
Um,
Oh no.
sorry, I opened it and like the first words on the first page where there's text instead of copyright info and stuff. Man is 3/4 water. It's like a threat after you know that this is about nuclear energy for desalting.
Right?
Um, this is definitely aimed for like what we consider like later primary school or middle school.
Mm-hmm.
They keep on giving all these like groundings in regular history and then trying to give you context for why this is important.
Wow.
Um, in 1,000 communities in the United States alone, the water supply is brackish, and though in some cases the salt concentration was within body tolerance, the water tastes harsh and bitter. Residents of these areas have to transport potable water long distances or purchase bottled drinking water.
Hmm.
And this is in like 1966.
Yeah.
After World War II, this country's expanding industrialization and explosive growth in population made heavy demands on water supplies. The evolving water problem was seen by some far-sighted legislators as serious enough to warrant federal government research into the possibility of economically converting saline or brackish sources to potable water. Here is a photo of our president, John F. Kennedy.
Oh my god, really?
Seated at his desk in the White House, President Kennedy pressed a button made of magnesium extracted from seawater to start fresh water flowing from the desalting plant in Freeport, Texas on June 21st, 1961.
Oh my god. Wow.
Let's see how this went. Shortly after he took office in 1961, President John F. Kennedy pledged his administration to redouble desalting efforts. Did you ever know? That was why they really took him down. He was going to take out the salt. Big Salt shot JFK.
No.
God. Submitting to Congress a bill to expand and extend the saline water conversion program, the late president said, "Water, one of the most familiar and abundant compounds on the Earth's surface, is rapidly becoming a limiting factor on economic growth in many areas of this nation and the world. As time goes on, more and more communities will be faced with the prospect of economic distress and stagnation unless alternative sources of suitable water are developed." This is like a whole nother paragraph. I know of no federal activity that offers greater promise of making a major contribution to the ultimate economic well-being of all mankind than this program.
Oh my god.
Like, it's just no fun unless you try the voice.
Yeah. Oh man.
In 1964, Resident Lyndon B. Johnson, whose interest in water purification began during his early days in the Senate. They all need an excuse to be interested in this.
Right? It's like they can't just be like, yeah, that sounds cool. They have to have like a personal reason.
Provided the spur for a new accelerated desalting effort. Oh, apparently the problem was JFK wasn't desalting enough.
He
The
wasn't
president asked
salty
the Department
enough.
of the Interior and the Atomic Energy Commission to prepare a plan for an aggressive and imaginative program to advance large-scale economic desalting. An aggressive and imaginative program to advance large-scale economic desalting of seawater. Okay. Someone declared a war on salt.
Oh dear.
So let's see. Could the burgeoning technologies of nuclear power and water desalting be joined to help solve civilization's immediate and projected needs for potable water. In 1959, they had plans for a small seawater distillation plant using a nuclear heat source.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. They use it for evaporation. There's some stuff. What year is this again? 1966. They're talking about stuff going on in Cuba.
Oh, man. I mean,
All
that.
processes. Go ahead.
I was going to say, is that pre or post Cuban Missile Crisis?
Cuban Missile Crisis was October 1963.
Ah.
So it's 3 years. This was published 3 years after that, but like a lot of the information is like several years out of date.
Mm-hmm.
I notice. So some of it could have been during or right after.
Right.
Let's see. President Johnson said in 1964, "The time is coming when a single desalting plant powered by nuclear energy will produce hundreds of millions of gallons of fresh water and large amounts of electricity every day."
Yes. Of course.
And did that ever happen?
No.
It just seems like we'd hear about that.
Yeah.
So, early desalting. Boiling water or pressurized water. Dual-purpose electric power and water desalting plants using these proven light water reactors could be brought into operation by the early 1970s. Oh, I bet this got Chernobyled.
Hmm.
Did you say something?
No, I was just like, oh. It got Chernobyled.
Yeah, I think there's something that must have happened with nuclear that must have drug out the timeline of it in the 70s. Because by the time it gets to the 80s, people are no longer willing. When did 3 Mile Island happen? Because that was like a sort of a first wave. 1979. Oh, I think that it's not so much there was something that happened to the nuclear industry in the 70s. This is also the same time that you have like the there's this one time where truckers have a lot of power and then it's all over. It's kind of the same guys.
Yeah.
So there was a big shift in nuclear power from eggheads to some guys who knew how to push which buttons. And when they moved it over to some guys who knew how to push which buttons, they started having accidents.
Ah.
One of the books that I got on nuclear stuff in my library is about this. I just haven't had a chance to really sit down and read it, but I have skimmed through it, and I've also kind of just anytime you look into the disasters like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, they talk about this, especially if it's like the American industry. Like the Soviet industry is a lot different because you get told to go work somewhere.
Yeah.
In those days, so like qualification is just kind of all over the place. But like they were training people very, very purposefully in the Soviet Union. With Chernobyl, I mean, we've talked about this before, and if anybody wants to know what happened with Chernobyl, just watch the HBO documentary. Like that was a matter of being squeezed by district managers for like overworking on shifts, not so much a matter of lack of qualification.
Right.
No one could be qualified to work under the constraints they were worked under. So like nuclear energy for desalting. This never happened because of what happened with the nuclear industry, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just weren't careful enough. And it really looks like, I mean, they were really trying to get kids into stem cells. Uh
You heard it here first, folks.
that's very recursive. So they were really trying to get kids into like STEM career areas. Um and STEM fields.
Yeah.
And I think that's really indicative of just the state of the industry. Like they were trying to have all these nuclear power plants, but they didn't have enough qualified workers to staff them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this has been always the case with nuclear power, that they still don't have enough qualified people to run nuclear power plants, like the fission plants.
Yes.
And like it's trying to tell you in these pamphlets that like kids can start learning about nuclear science, and I've tried to take that approach. I've pretended to be the kid, and it's too hard.
It's very hard.
Like the basics anyone can get. Anybody can watch the HBO Chernobyl documentary and understand why the reactor's blue.
Mm-hmm.
They managed to explain it in a way that, you know, it gives you an idea of what happens there with the reactions and what happened and everything like that. But you could never watch that documentary and watch some YouTube videos and go through like a course on uh you know, one of those luminosity or whatever
Yeah.
kind of things where you get, you know, you take a course and suddenly you know a bunch about this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember any of them because there's been so many ads for them that it's been filtered out of my head.
Curiosity Stream.
Curiosity, there's one of
Nebula.
them.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant's one of them. So like if you take a few courses on Brilliant on like how nuclear science works, it's not going to allow you to make the calculations to run a nuclear reactor.
No.
And like the math involved with this, for one, is very hard. And for two, the what's going on of this, like understanding the actual science of nuclear fission and also understanding what's going on with physics, understanding what's happening to the materials that are being exposed to the nuclear radiation and how they're breaking down, like understanding all of the isotopes, keeping up with with all the advancements in the field. It's very, very, very hard. It is very hard to read the papers.
I have to react to something. I just realized I had a beaver working in this power wheel with nothing hooked up to it. So he's just sitting there running for nothing.
Oh my gosh. You took that beaver off the grid.
I did. And then made it run on a beaver wheel. For no reason.
Cruel.
I'm so mean. I feel so bad.
Let that beaver go drink some water.
Yeah, I gave him a break. He's not
Go
doing anything
desalinate
now.
that beaver. Nuclear space reactors.
Okay.
See, there's so much of this. I don't know if they're ever going to do this, or if now this is considered more secret than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
Like these pamphlets, they were sent out to science classrooms, so it shouldn't be a secret. But it just like there's so many of these where I look at it and I'm like, why? I just don't feel like I should know this.
Right.
Putting the atom in orbit. Okay, what year is this? 1966. We're not on the moon yet.
Okay.
That will happen in 3 years.
Gotcha.
When the chaos of World War II subsided, it was apparent that two important technological developments had occurred. The Germans had developed a large rocket, the V2. This accomplishment was to fulfill prophecies made years before by the American rocket experimenter Robert Goddard, the German space pioneer Hermann Oberth, and the far-sighted Russian Konstantin Tsiolkovsky.
Prophecies.
Prophecies.
Prophecies. Not
the
predictions.
Prophecies. The second development, the atomic bomb, introduced a new, extremely compact form of energy that might be used to propel spacecraft, operate equipment, and sustain men on board. They can eat protons. Remember, we're going to use this for food prep, we swear.
Oh my god.
If you run the engine, you can grill some burgers on it.
Tasty, tasty irradiated steak.
Plutonium steak, isn't that what
Becquerel.
they're feeding Becquerel that. Becquerel is another one of the radiation units.
Da da da.
He's also a scientist who did important things.
You didn't know that Homestuck was teaching you atomic science.
Homestuck was teaching you.
That just sounds like an oxymoron.
Let's see. In the late 1940s, many scientists and engineers mused about the possibilities of combining the rocket and the atom. Space travel, however, was still a dream, and besides, nuclear power had not been harnessed even for terrestrial use. Other matters dominated the national interest. An exception to this situation, however, was found in Project Feedback, a Cold War study of military reconnaissance satellites sponsored by the U.S. Air Force and carried out by the RAND Corporation at Santa Monica, California.
Okay.
During Project Feedback, the first serious studies were made of obtaining satellite power from fissioning uranium and from radioactive isotopes. Radioactive-powered satellites. The relatively high power requirements, a few kilowatts, as much as the output of a small outboard motor, for some proposed satellites led the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission in 1951 to request a series of nuclear power plant studies from industry. These studies, completed in 1952, concluded that both fission and radioisotope power plants were technically feasible for use on satellites. At that time, there were no rockets capable of launching a satellite, although the first intercontinental ballistic missiles were being developed. But the need for nuclear power in space had been recognized. Theoretical studies continued even though there was not yet any program of space exploration. Wow!
Wow.
This is... I'm learning new things about the space program.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'm gonna kind of save this for later, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or just kind of, like, read this deeper at some point. Right now I'm just kind of flicking through it because I don't want to go too much into how these... I don't want to really read a bunch of technical stuff on reactors right now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. What does ambitious mean?
What does ambitious mean?
It is easy to generalize about the role of nuclear power as long as we use the adjective ambitious. See conceptual drawings of ambitious spacecraft on pages 22 and 23. I'm looking. Okay, there are a bunch of rockets. And one looks kind of like a big... There's like a moon base that has big sails on it that are rectangular.
Mm-hmm.
And a kind of a three-pointed satellite thingy. But none of these are like... These don't look like stuff that would have people in it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, never mind. There is a vehicle on the moon. So there's... the moon base would be a manned moon base. We still don't have one of those! We have not been ambitious.
No.
To be more precise, however, there are 4 categories of space missions where reactor power seems appropriate. Almost everyone will agree that they are all truly ambitious. 1. Large orbiting space laboratories carrying several scientists who will conduct long-term scientific and military research. Launchings could begin about 1972. Solar cells are quite competitive for this purpose. 2. Lunar exploration beginning after the Project Apollo lunar landing. So they're planning on that at this point. These missions will involve scientific surveys of the lunar surface and probably the establishment of a permanent base in the late 1970s. Nope, that's not going to happen.
Nope.
3. The scientific reconnaissance of the nearer planets, especially Mars, with large unmanned automatic landers, followed by manned landings, possibly in the 1980s.
Oh, wow.
That's like Mars was. When I went to space camp in the early 90s, like, they had a mission to Mars portion of it. They were talking about Mars all the time. Like, they were acting like we were going to already be on Mars by now. Like, it really sounded like, by 2000 we're going to be doing stuff on Mars.
Yeah.
And, like, I really think that someone just said, no, we're not going to do that yet. Like, I swear there's stuff that we've had ready for Mars and moon missions that someone's got all the plans drawn up. We know how we're going to do this. We've known how we've going to be doing this since, like, decades ago. But no one just wants to, like, say, okay, I'll pay for it. Do it now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these calculations must have been based on nuclear power.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much of it that I'm seeing in these pamphlets. They're really basically assuming that. Actually, it's kind of twofold. They're assuming that nuclear power is gonna, like, provide cheap enough, efficient enough energy that they can do everything they want. And if they're not assuming nuclear power is going to do that, they're assuming that solar power will do it. Like, they're talking about solar power being competitive against nuclear here. And it's 1966. And you know how solar power succeeded.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't. It really didn't.
Yep.
So, like, that's the weird thing is, so much of our actual government has kind of been expecting these technologies to already have been done, like, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So, what the heck happened? And, like, I think that they were way more dependent on nuclear being part of the energy portfolio than they've really been admitting.
Yeah.
I mean, also, I just feel like there must have been some returns on nuclear energy that they were expecting to get that they just didn't. Like, someone must have gotten some math wrong at some point.
Something. Because, like, I feel like there were a lot of things that were dependent on nuclear, cheap or free nuclear energy that really got hamstrung.
Yeah. I also think that some of it was dependent on kind of a information exchange between countries, and like we were getting our scientists headhunted by the Soviet Union. And we were headhunting their scientists too. At some point, I think that there was more focus made on sabotaging other countries' programs than actually, like, causing ours to get anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, as much money as they spend screwing up other people, They just don't seem to be spending as much making our stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's an interesting pamphlet here on like rare earth metals, but it's not great reading aloud material. Nuclear terms, a brief glossary.
Oh, fun.
This glossary is intended for persons who are not specialists in the subject matter of atomic energy. Great. A-bomb, an atomic bomb.
Whoa! What's a B-bomb?
Love it. Starts with that. Technically, it started with A, which is the symbol for a mass number. But, yeah, A-bomb.
Just a bomb.
Aftercooling. The cooling of a reactor after it has been shut down.
Okay. This sounds relevant to some stuff.
Does any reactor need aftercooling right now? If it does, please raise its hand.
Right?
Let's see. Angstrom. A unit of length used in measuring electromagnetic radiation, equal to 10 to the negative 8th centimeter. Named for A.J. Angstrom, Swedish spectroscopist. A spectroscopist. A spectroscoper operates a spectroscope.
I'm sorry, I really shouldn't laugh.
You can, it's fine. Ooh, this is cool. Annihilation. See antimatter.
What?
Annihilation.
Annihilation.
See antimatter.
That sounds like the step up from violation.
Yeah. Antimatter. Matter in which the ordinary nuclear particles, neutrons, protons, electrons, etc., are conceived of as being replaced by their corresponding antiparticles, antineutrons, antiprotons, positrons, etc. An antihydrogen atom, for example, would consist of a negatively charged antiproton with an orbital positron. Normal matter and antimatter would mutually annihilate each other upon contact, being converted totally into energy.
Mutually assured annihilation.
They wanted to make antimatter drives. That's the thing, is that I've looked into the antimatter stuff. I've looked this up, but they don't really say a lot if you just Google this stuff. They don't say why antimatter is something that anybody's looking into. They just say, oh yeah, well, to fill out the standard model and figure out where all the mass was going, we had to bang a bunch of particles together and figure out which ones were there. And it's like, sure, that's all you were doing with those millions of dollars a day.
Yep.
But if you collide normal matter and antimatter, they mutually annihilate each other, and they become converted totally into energy. So if you can convert it totally into energy, and then you can store that energy in a battery, then you've solved power forever. And I'm sure they told a senator that that was going to happen in 15 years.
Right.
That's all you need to do to get your project funded. Atomic cloud. The cloud of hot gases, smoke, dust, and other matter that is carried aloft after the explosion of a nuclear weapon in the air or near the surface. The cloud frequently has a mushroom shape. See fireball. Radioactive cloud. atomic reactor, a nuclear reactor.
Okay.
There's so much stuff here where it's like atomic thing here, and it's like nuclear thing here.
Right.
Autoradiograph. A photographic record of radiation from radioactive material in an object, made by placing the object very close to a photographic film or emulsion. The process is called autoradiography. It is used, for instance, to locate radioactive atoms or tracers in metallic or biological samples.
Huh.
Compare radiography. I will compare radiography. If you got it there. Radioactive. Radiography. The use of ionizing radiation for the production of shadow images on photographic emulsion. Some of the rays, gamma rays or X-rays, pass through the subject, while others are partially or completely absorbed by the more opaque parts of the subject and thus cast a shadow on the photographic film. So it's like an X-ray.
Gotcha.
An autoradiograph is like you set down a radioactive object and it just like picks up the radioactive material that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of radiation being aimed directly at the material.
Right.
Neat.
Interesting.
Barn. A unit area used in expressing the cross sections of atoms, nuclei, electrons, and other particles.
Okay.
1 barn is equal to 10 to the negative 24th square centimeters. This is literally because of hitting the broadside of a barn.
Mm-hmm.
Someone made a joke about that, and that became a part of science.
Of course.
Beam hole. An opening through a reactor shield and generally through the reactor reflector, which permits a beam of radioactive particles or radiation to be used for experiments outside the reactor. Oh, so they run that thing, and they also let the protons out to play. Betatron. A donut-shaped accelerator in which electrons traveling in an orbit of constant radius are accelerated by a changing magnetic field.
Okay.
Energies as high as 340 MeV have been attained. Betatron. It sounds like the gravitron.
Right.
Biological dose. The radiation dose absorbed in biological material.
Okay.
Measured in REMS. Okay, so if there's biological material, it's REMS. This is why we're having so many of the units change.
Mm-hmm.
Just a second.
Alrighty. What I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna do this. Boop. Boop. Yeah. Yeah. There.
Ah!
Ooh. What?
You remember how I gave you the definition of a beam hole?
Yes.
And a beam hole is basically like a hole in the reactor shielding where the little particles can come out so that they can do experiments with it.
Yes.
Well, apparently another word for a beam hole is a glory hole.
Oh. Lovely. Yeah, I don't think that name's gonna work anymore.
I'm pretty sure that they had it back then for the same reason that it's
Oh
not going to work now.
no.
This is 1967. They have glory holes.
You're right.
They have already invented the glory hole.
You're
They have so
right.
much technology.
You're right. I really.
Ground Zero.
Just...
If you want to move on, I can move on.
Please.
Ground Zero. The point on the surface of land or water vertically below or above the center of a burst of a nuclear explosion.
Okay.
For a burst over or under water, the term surface zero is preferable.
Surface zero.
Yeah.
Oh no, Beaver's injured.
Like, they use ground zero as, like, this really spooky term now, but it's, like, got an actual definition for what it really means.
What did you hurt? What did you hurt?
Oh no.
Did you hurt your arm?
Show us the boo-boo. What?
So, if a beaver hurt their arm,
Mm-hmm.
what would their surname be?
Boomerang.
Cool. I've just been coming up with random names to name them whenever I notice that they're injured. Oh no, another one. Who else got hurt? Ah, where is it? There it is. Oh, you hurt your other arm.
Did you know that reactors can be hetero or homo?
What?
Heterogeneous reactor. A reactor in which the fuel is separate from the moderator and is arranged in discrete bodies, such as fuel elements. Most reactors are heterogeneous. Homogeneous reactor. A reactor in which the fuel is mixed with or dissolved in the moderator or coolant.
Okay.
Example, a fused salt reactor.
All right.
So, that's the nuclear book of stuff. There's your body and radiation, there's nuclear power and merchant shipping, but another thing that I brought down was, this sounds so fancy.
Oh no.
The Atlantic Council of the United States Policy Papers, Nuclear Power and Nuclear Weapons Proliferation. Report of the Atlantic Council's Nuclear Fuels Policy Working Group. Volume 1.
Okay.
This was in the library of the University of Connecticut at Hartford. Looks like it was entered into circulation in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
It's been discarded from the collection.
Of course.
So, I like collecting things like this, and I think it's another thing it's going to be starting to get harder to find.
Mm-hmm.
They're, like, I love the inside cover here. Additional copies of Volume 1 and Volume 2 may be ordered prepaid at $6 each from the Atlantic Council of the United States, address in Washington, D.C.
All right.
And it's like, I am sure that is no longer the case.
Yeah. Which is kind of unfortunate because, you know, I really feel like a lot of these materials serve a very important purpose. And I think it's very interesting how much of it we still have. Like,
it's
didn't you
really astounding to me.
Didn't you buy those in like lots? The pamphlets that you've been reading? Like
the little pamphlets,
yeah,
those were in like huge lots. You could get them really, really easily, like a bunch of them all at once. And I tried to get basically a complete set.
Yeah.
I think I managed to get all of them that they made.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that remains easy because, I mean, I think they should continue to make these.
Yeah. No, I think that, like, This is something that I've never seen or heard about, in my school. And I think stuff like this is super important because, like, there isn't as much of this scientific STEM outreach in this way, where it's literally just like, hey, kid, you bored? Here, read this,
Yeah, and like I feel like people are going to be a lot less open to this now that there's like so many people who are paranoid about the government or think that, we need like smaller government or whatnot. Because like all of this stuff, like it mentions the UN, it talks about international types of operations. Like the thing about nuclear power is that it's actually impossible to imagine nuclear power without involving the entire world
Yeah.
because uranium, you don't get to pick where the uranium is.
No.
And you don't get to pick where all of the other rare earth metals are either. All of these deposits are they're worldwide, and the amount of logistics to build a reactor, to keep it going, to make all of that happen, it involves the entire world's resources to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to have nuclear power stay there, you have to have an entire world that will actually trade with each other.
Right.
And I really think that part of the problem is that, like, they basically found a power source that was too good to be true and decided to control all of world politics to make sure that it stayed available.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out it was too good to be true.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Like, this is a legacy that we all as citizens have to live with, is we have these reactors, and I'm not saying that they're completely bad or completely useless, but like, my goodness, if we're going to have these still be around, they should be putting a lot more resources into researching real things to do with this, not like trying to tell some private company like, hey, we've had these plans for reactors that have been sitting around for like 50 years. Could you figure out how to finally make it work?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, bitch, the reason why they never figured out how to make it work before is because they figured out it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I killed the chat.
You killed it. So, we've been streaming for over 2 hours. How you feeling?
I'm feeling all right. I do want to kind of wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
The Atlantic Council policy papers are pretty interesting. It basically talks about like the fuel cycle, the international like involvement with it. This is about non-proliferation, so it's like, how do you have nuclear power and also not have nuclear weapons proliferating?
Mm-hmm.
How do you have nuclear power and make sure that only certain like entities actually have access to it?
Yeah.
This is the ultimate Pandora's box, in my opinion. Once you open up the possibility of nuclear power, of fission, of fusion, of like the inside of the atom and all of that, like, it has been impossible for humanity to put it away again.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's now impossible for us to put it away again because you cannot put radioactive material away and never think about it again.
Mm-mm.
It's going to be around possibly for longer than humanity is.
Yeah.
So it's like, if like these poor beavers, what if they happened upon like a leaky
Right.
the fission reactor? What the heck would they do?
Right. No, that's the thing, is like, actually part of the reason for the water pumps is they're filtering it because canonically this is post-apocalyptic and the water is potentially like polluted.
Yeah, and it's probably got fucking rare earth metals in it. They might have cobalt 60 in there.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like, I've talked with you about my my old glass collection.
Mm-hmm.
the antique glass, and part of the reason why that stuff is so rare is because it's actually got rare earth metals in it too.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it's interesting. My grandma, who gave me several pieces that I have, and also taught me almost everything that I know about them. She was talking to me once about how the bowls and vases and stuff, especially like the bowls and plates, the things that look like they could be eaten off of or drunk from.
Yeah.
Some of them are safe to use and some of them are not.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that most of them are not safe to use is because it's leaded.
Mm.
It's the lead that you don't actually want to be interacting with. But there's also stuff in there like cobalt.
Mm-hmm.
And this is being made. Some of it is being made around the same time as uranium glass was being made. So you might even have residual in the factories of who knows what. I honestly, at some point, want to get like a radiation detector and run it around my older antiques and see which of them set it off.
Yeah.
Because there's really no telling what some stuff was exposed to and what was in some factories.
Mm-hmm.
But like the cobalt, at a certain point they stopped using it in the glass anymore. Like the factory stopped using cobalt, period.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have to look into why at some point because different people say different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But to my knowledge, cobalt may have gotten too expensive to be used in glass.
Huh. Interesting.
Because cobalt started to be something that you could use industrially for honestly for radioactive stuff for
Right.
one, but also chemically for certain things. It's one of the necessary metals for solar panels, wind,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. I believe it's used in batteries.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the purpose it would be used for today. They wouldn't waste cobalt in glass vases right now.
Right.
You would have to sell them for so much to recoup the cost, and also I think it would just be considered a waste of resources.
Mm-hmm.
But so they were making this at a certain time whenever the resource was not really tagged as necessary for the industry.
Right.
And it's just interesting to have these materials now, because at the time that it was first being explained to me about the cobalt, it was just that people considered it poisonous.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't really stop anybody when it came to lead solder on canned goods until the 80s.
Right.
So it really seems to be more a resource availability thing. Like uranium, the entire market for uranium is controlled by world governments.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely cannot just buy uranium on the market. And at a certain point, it wasn't like that, and you could just make stuff out of uranium, and there were lots of uranium related products. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter. The uranium supply is going to be controlled by whoever needs the energy, and it's not going to be used for making glow in the dark glass.
Right.
Because that's another waste of resources.
Mm-hmm.
That uranium glass stuff just drives me nuts. It's so weird that it's just out there. It could be out there in any number of flea markets.
Yeah.
And if it's not in a shop or something, that means it was probably broken, which means there's lots of little shards of uranium glass in landfills. Just sitting there.
Right. So.
And with that, audience, we bid you...
we bid you adieu. Try not to get irradiated.
Sleep well in your beds tonight. If you're irradiated enough, you won't even need a nightlight.
Ah.
Just have a piece of uranium glass nearby.
Make sure to shatter it first. Just inhale all those particles.
Just sprinkle it into your carpet, and your carpet can glow in the dark.
Don't actually do that. Just
Probably don't take any of our advice.
I mean, we're called bad occult advice, so I'm pretty sure we're not giving good science advice either.
Yeah, our science advice is very good if you're 1963.
Sure.
If you're from 1963 or so, all of this advice was very good, and you're welcome.
All right. With that, I bid you good night.
Night.